connection, misdirection, sets the stage to turn the page. At the raising of the curtain, I am hurting and uncertain of the parts we have played. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again? Fading out of the close-up, everybody's reeling, no concealing. Your beauty is seed stealing. Violins are singing, sunset's waiting, radiating. Your entrance is breathtaking. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again?
Hello, everybody. Drew here from Four Wall. Welcome to episode 35 of the Four Wall Sunday Roundtable. It's our first episode that we've had a panel of gaffers, so it should be a great episode. I am joined once again by my co-host, Jeff Kreuter. Jeff, how you doing today?
Hey, Drew, I'm doing well. You didn't freeze again, so we're 2 for 2 after that, so I'm happy. Hey. We'll get back to that again at some point.
Yeah,
maybe.
For sure.
But you're on the road today, even though your background looks exactly the same. You're doing a road show. Where are you? How are things?
Good. I'm in Central California. I came to visit my mom. Packed the family up and drove from Vegas 8.5 hours with a 6-month-old and a 4-year-old. So it was one of the best drives I've ever had.
They've done this, so they're well traveled now, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, each time it gets a little easier, but it's still. It is what it is with them.
Does your 4-year-old have the favorite places yet to stop on the way, or
any place that she can go get some candy and green chippies?
Sure, me too.
Doesn't really
get that.
Yeah. So, excellent. How are you doing?
Great. I'm fine. I don't know. Great. I'm like the latest great. I'm COVID good.
Good.
I'm doing fine. Thanks. We have some great guests today.
Yes.
We always have great guests, so we're very lucky. You and I are very lucky. Every Sunday we get to talk to some very smart people.
Yep.
I will say there's a little difference here with this one, and I'll get to that in a moment. I'm going to start by saying that there's a lot of we've been talking about this all week, and I've actually spoken about this with some of our guests. There's a lot of crossover between live entertainment and film and television. The Gaffer is one of several jobs that don't cross over, and it's surprising to me and surprising to many people how many people who work in theater don't know what a Gaffer actually does. It's not surprising to me that people who don't work in the entertainment industry don't either. And I think after watching this, I'm pretty sure everyone will know what gaffers do. That's our goal here. We have an impressive group of people joining us today. And for the first time, this is what I was going to get at before, the first time in our 35 episode history, I don't personally know any of them. So I'm really excited to meet them and talk to them and find out what they do. And let's bring them on and just jump right in.
Yeah, awesome. Our first guest is Gaffer Christian Epps. Hey, Christian.
Good morning or good evening.
Yeah. Good afternoon for me, you know. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening for Jeff. Second is Michael Gallart. I think I butchered that. Sorry, Michael. Did I?
I think you did.
Go ahead and say it.
Michael Gallart.
Gallart.
Very close.
Sorry. Next is Evin Lowe. Hey, Evin.
Hey, hi.
Evan?
And last but not least, Jason Uchita. Hey, Jason.
Hey everyone, how are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us. And let's dive right in. Evan, we're going to start with you.
Oh, okay.
You're up first. Okay, so we're going to spend the next hour or so diving deeper into the answer to this first question. But to kick things off, what is your quick definition? What is a gaffer?
I think in LA they like the title Chief Lighting Technician, which is pretty descriptive.
I was going
I
to
feel
ask
like
about that.
my
Yeah.
job is to work with the director of photography to realize their lighting vision, whatever that may be. How involved or how much I just do, sort of carry out orders, varies job to job, but I'm there to implement the lighting plan.
Michael, what would you add to that?
I would say that as a gaffer, you are head of the electric department, and you are in concert with the director of photography. But more than that, you also coordinate all electric needs that the entire company would come through you. So work for the departments, the art department, construction, pretty much anything that is electric would come to you or through you, even if you were to delegate it off to someone else on your team.
Got it. Christian,
Yes.
what would you add to that definition?
As Evan suggested, sometimes, hopefully often, you're there to expand the direct photography's vision, and by contributing your own, of course, but under their guidance. And also one thing that is, I think, important, particularly in pre-production and during production, when direct photography is very, very busy, you can, if your relationship is strong, become a representative or a voice for the director of photography to other departments.
Yeah, that seems very important.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it's nice for a DP to have someone like you who can do that. Jason, what would you like to add to the definition, the Merriam-Webster definition?
I think the one thing that I would add is that when you're talking about other branches of the entertainment industry, like your gaffer in television and film is comparable to your ME in theater or your crew chief when you're talking about going out on the road or something like that. They're the general on the floor for the DP or the designer to implement their plans in real world application.
Got it. Evan, you mentioned chief lighting technician. I was going to ask that also. It's the same. It is the same title, same person in many cases.
I've not worked on the West Coast, and judging by how sunny it is where Jason and Christian are, I assume you're out in California somewhere. Maybe you can correct me, but I believe they are the exact same thing. It's just different nomenclature.
Got it. Okay. Great. Cool.
Well,
easy.
Jason, we'll stick with you. Where specifically do you work? Like what kind of projects, and what have you done over the course of your career?
I make the bulk of my living doing special event, variety show, award show, live event types of one-offs. So when it comes to like the title of gaffer, my role is oftentimes more of a hybrid role that falls into line with a melding of, the crew chief, ME, gaffer positions all into one thing, because we're going from town to town a lot of times and going into an arena or a stadium or a theater or something like that to do a special event. So I do probably half my work in town, half out of town.
Right. Awesome. Evin, how about you?
I've mostly, since I joined the union, I've done television, because television definitely seems to be the bulk of the work right now in New York. Prior to being in the union, I did everything. I did movies, I did fashion, I did video art, I did commercials. It was, I think I even did installations for convention centers. Been a little all over the map.
Awesome.
Cool.
Michael, how about you?
I have spent about half my career on set, working as a lamp operator, and then I spent about 10 years as a, well, they now call it a programmer. I was a dimmer board operator. And, but after spending a few decades on set, I sort of moved towards becoming a region gaffer, which is currently what I'm doing now for a network TV show. And what we say is I'm a gaffer by choice and rigging gaffer by the grace of God.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, is that I'm not chained to the camera or the director of photography. However, I am a slave to a longer day that starts earlier or goes later, and I'm everywhere before everybody else. So sometimes I'm first to the table. This is the best person to get there, and I'm certainly always sometimes the last to leave. But it's a choice.
Sure.
And because of it, I deal a lot more with other departments, like, for instance, the art department, construction, especially in recent years, there's a lot more installed lighting that I have to get involved with, especially LEDs,
Sure.
sets of lighting components, even costumes. Sometimes they have lighting inside of it. It's something that I might have to deal with now that wasn't even a thing 10 years ago.
Great. Awesome. And Christian, how about you?
Most of the 90s in New York was half the sort of music video crowd and the feature film crowd. The 2000s was mostly Atlanta, split between New York, and the end of it was television, like sort of what Jason suggests. Multi-camera TV, moving lights, and live audience was half my life, doing a feature once a year. Nowadays, it's mostly narrative television in the last 2 years with one feature a year. But my start was in the theater in New York, and that permeates a lot of the work.
Well, that's a great transition. A nice theater word. Christian, can you talk more about your start? Where did it begin for you, and how did you become a gaffer?
I'll give you the short version. Moved to Atlanta in 11th grade. Found out if you get on the crew, you get out of class early because the classes were performing arts. Literally, that was my entire plan. And I loved it. And it was a great program just by chance. So at Northside High School in Atlanta, Georgia. And then went to Howard undergraduate for theater, technical theater. Lighting was my focus, of course. Went to NYU for theater lighting, and I was at Tisch as a grad student.
Oh, cool.
Year there, and then freelanced around New York, and then got into film roundabout my son coming into the world, because the finances in theater seemed very far away to take care of him. And
good reason. So it started for you. You started in theater in New York, and then how did you get that first film job?
I actually went to a set designer friend of mine, Charles McClanahan, who had since passed, and said, "Charles, you work in the film." He was doing theater as well. You work in film sometimes. He had worked for Spike Lee on something. And I said, "Please, can I come work for you as a PA so I can meet the lighting guys, so I can eat?" And literally, I did. The first day, I went and introduced myself. I spent day 2 and 3 in the lighting department as a PA and music video. And then that was the next 10 years.
Amazing. Cool. Michael, how about you?
I was always just interested in photography. I went to the School of Visual Arts. I worked in New York for many different photographers as an assistant. I worked for Irving Penn for a while, Pete Turner. And then I worked for a photographer who directed commercials. I saw
we lost Michael, or did you all lose me? You got me. Okay.
I got you there.
Okay, we'll come back to Michael. Evin.
Oh, did I get back now?
Oh, yeah. If you want to go ahead, continue.
So I worked for a still photographer who directed TV commercials. Saw the crews came in, saw what they were doing, and it was a lot different kind of a vibe. And the lighting attracted me much more so than just dealing with working as a photo assistant stinks. If anybody's ever done it, you sort of do everything. So from there, went to work for a Gaffer, and videos were sort of in their infancy. So it was very easy to quickly gain the trust of a lot newer workforce that was coming onto a new form of filmmaking, music videos. And I was very quickly able to gain a foothold and move through that.
Yeah,
Great.
we actually have a photo from one of your music video shoots.
It's great.
Tell
Yeah,
what's this from?
That's 1990. That was Chub Rock, Treat 'Em Right. And that was shot at what was then just the Brooklyn Navy Yard, way before Steiner Studios was built there. It was horrible. The hours were long. It was extremely disorganized, and yet I tried to get as many that as I possibly could. I remember what's interesting about that was mostly lit with mirrors because we couldn't rig up into it. It was like we're grasping at different ideas that we could have to get things done in the time we had given with the crew size we had and the lights we could afford.
It's this, isn't it the same? Just bigger, more lights, bigger projects. The same problems. Evin, first of all, you won the award for best and only background, so best view. So
I know, but I need a grip because I need a flag to kill the reflection of the
Right.
paper lantern I'm using to light myself with.
Looks good though. How did you get your start? What were your humble beginnings, and how did you?
I mean, as a kid, I was always into photography. I can sound like a real old timer, be like, I got my first Kodak Brownie. But I had a camera from when I was like 9, and eventually I was lucky. I went to a high school that had a TV studio, and it kind of led me into film school. And I got out of film school. I had no idea how to get a job, and I worked at some Michael may know that I worked at a place called National Video Center, which was like a broadcast kind of a stage. And then I quit because I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I sort of hustled my way into the independent film world. And I was there for about 11 years, and I finally went on like the most awful job interview I'd ever, like every red flag you ever could think of for a job went up, and I was like, well, I got to get my union card. And from there, took the test and spent 9 years trying to get into the union. Finally did, and fell in with some really great crews, other gaffers who kind of mentored me. And when they started putting me up for jobs as a gaff, like when they didn't want something or something they were moving on from, I made it known, like my interest was in gaffing, and I wanted to move up that way. Yeah. And you know,
and here we are.
This is my glamorous landing.
Well, nice view. Glamorous indeed. Only view. Jason, how about you?
I honestly kind of fell into it. I went to Cal State Fullerton. I was in the Department of Theater and Dance as a performer. And after I graduated, I tore my ACL playing amateur men's league soccer. I had to have reconstructive knee surgery, and so had to do something in the meantime for the about 2 years when you couldn't take a dance call audition. And I had a friend who was working for a labor company in town here in Los Angeles, and he asked me if I would come in and give them a hand because they were hurting in the electrics department, and specifically in their ME position. They had nobody to sort of like run the guys. And I had been doing that in my time in the theater as well. And so I went there and did that. And when I was at the Orpheum in downtown Los Angeles, it's a spot where a lot of TVs and movies will come through. And I met a couple of the crews that were there, and it just sort of all snowballed from there. Like one of the guys said, hey, you should come work with us. I said, okay. And then in working with that crew, they said, hey, you should get your card. And I said, okay. And it just kept right on going, and just sort of progressed to here.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm really lucky, I want to say. I mean, it was just the right place at the right time a lot of the time.
That's how so many things are.
Yeah, definitely. Jason, what was your first job in the film or TV?
Oh, my first job. So when I was with that labor company, I was doing a show. It was some sort of men's centric award show for Spike TV. I don't recall exactly what it was, but it was one of those shows that was specifically geared toward like male programming, I would say. Like it was like a horror awards show or something like that. I can't remember. I can't recall directly.
And
but
I imagine that's not a thing anymore.
No, I know it, but it was like, it was like it was very obvious that that's what it was geared toward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Christian, what was your first film or TV job?
It was that music video. It was Spike had done School Days. That group, whose name I can't remember anymore, was shooting the song was a hit, and they were doing like the B-side, trying to get another hit that sounded the same.
Yeah.
My first film job was Mo Better Blues with them, where I was used my theater training with ETC Expression to run a union crew for a week ahead of the shoot of first unit to install all the theatrical lights. I spec'd the lights and the layout and wiring and ran all the practicals with the crew. And then they came in the second week, we actually shot in there, however long we were there.
Awesome.
Cool.
Evin, what was your first TV film job?
First, like just anything, or first gaffing job?
We'll say first gaffing job.
I want to know both. I want both.
Yeah, let's do both.
You know both?
Yeah.
Well, the funny answer is my very first job in the movie business was making popcorn at the movie theater in high school. So I really started at the bottom.
That's good.
Yeah.
But
Honest.
I guess I started at a broadcast studio, and I had gotten a job. They had a program to train you to become an editor, which I knew I didn't want to do, but it was like, okay, this is one step closer to where I want to be. And eventually got a job in their stages, and there I did everything. I painted Sykes, I hung lights, I operated camera. They even had me do makeup once, which went very badly. My first gaffing job was, I don't know if anybody remembers the documentary called Paris is Burning about the drag scene in Paris.
Cool.
Jenny Livingston made a short film after that, and that was my first.
Got it.
It was her short. It was a satire, shoestring budget.
Yeah.
But it was a fun gig.
Great. Michael, what about you? What was your first job?
Well, my first job in film and television was working for an equipment company, loading the trucks and filling the menu of what was needed. And it was a very great opportunity to learn what everything was, and then meet the crews, because I took out a truck package, and it was sort of a great introduction to what they need and how they use it. And then I would never stay on the truck. I'd come to set and watch what they were doing. But my first gaffing job was actually a short film shot in New York. It was all shot in Urdu dialect. It was for distribution in India, and it was I think it was called Dance Goddess or something like that. And I remember the star of it was a Boy George lookalike. And we shot in a lot of New York iconic backdrop places, and it was they didn't have very much money, but I was allowed to gaff it.
And up from there. Drew, we have a comment from someone watching
Okay.
our program.
Oh, good. Is it Kate?
I believe it is Kate.
Kate, she said, based on this panel, I would like to add the definition that gaffers look really cool because you all look really cool. So thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Kate.
Haircut, so she knows.
Okay, moving along. Let's start with Jason this time. Jason, on the course of a project, who are your closest collaborators, and what is the hierarchy? Who do you work for? Who works for you? How does that work on a set that you work on?
So typically on the projects that I work on, my closest collaboration is with the designer. And then I usually take it from there. So the designer will come up with the sort of artistic vision of the show, and then I will take what they have given and turn it into, the reality of what we can and cannot do with the physical limitations of the building, or implementing what sort of power plan we need and all of that stuff. And then I usually take the ball from there and roll as far as coordinating with the vendors and coordinating with the rest of production and coordinating with other departments, and just making sure that once that person shows up on site, everything is the way that they imagined it, and then they can do what they're really there to do.
Got it. Evin, how about you? Who do you work with?
I'm primarily the cinematographer or director of photography.
Mhm.
And then the grip department. And what surprised me most as I got into bigger jobs was how closely electric and art work together, which I think Michael touched on. Anything that's built into the set, all the practical lamps, sconces, if you have props that need to light up, the Marvel movies are full of things like that, but anybody just holding a lantern or something like that, as you're prepping things, the amount of, if you have a good art department, they'll reach out to you or your shop electric and let you know, like, oh, we're going to be hanging these fluorescent fixtures. What kind of bulbs do you want in them? What do we need to be able to do? So, yeah.
Got it. Michael, how about you? What are the not just the specific jobs, like who are the people who work under you to facilitate what you need? I know you work very closely with the DP and the cinematographer. Who works for you?
Well, I was going to say my crew. So I have a best boy, also referred to as the assistant chief lighting technician. But the best boy will kind of be the, let's say, the foreman who handles everything. And without that person, I could not get a thing done, because they're going to deal with a lot of paperwork, making sure that everybody's where they need to be, when they need to be there, what equipment's on what trucks for what days. Because I'm now working as a rigging gaffer, I'm working with the gaffer in what needs to be where. Television right now is a producer's medium. So I deal with a lot more of logistics of which lights need to be where and when, and there's a schedule that is very important to be met and used. So the crew that I work with, the production coordinator, even the Teamsters and the Teamster captains for trucking. For me, lighting logistics is more of what I need to focus on, so that everything's where it needs to be, when it needs to be ready.
Yeah. And Christian, who do you surround yourself with? Who are the people that you work with on a particular job?
Well, obviously the DP, as it's been touched on, the production designer and the art director under them would go neck and neck. Production designer often has a lot more big fish to fry than me, but I have to find a language to help represent the DP as they move ahead. But production designer is ahead of the first unit. And then the best boy is critical, because all the manpower usually comes through the best boy. I might have a recommendation of one, 2, 3 particular I might ask for, but the best boy is critical to my whole success. And if I have to do a piece of paper work like suggested, I would just die at this point.
I see. So the best boy is the person that then you tell how to run the crew. The best boy runs the crew then in this.
Hopefully they get a good crew.
Yeah. They find the crew, I guess. Yeah.
Certain best boys have certain regulars they work with, and we give them as much leeway as they want and we can stand. And then they're good at shuffling the equipment ahead of you, so hopefully you don't have to think too far ahead. By the second or third week, you know how this thing is going to go many days to many locations. So hopefully they've got enough people from production scheduled, how many day players we got today or tomorrow. And yeah, they are the
logistics.
They are the logistics of everything. And the better the best boy, the easier my job is.
Yeah. Jason or Evan, do you want to add anything else to this, just in terms of the crew,
No, I would definitely say your best boy can make or break your electric department for sure, because you're sort of, as a gaffer, I work mostly as a shooting gaffer, so you're sort of on set, glued to the camera, glued to the DP, but the best boy can make sure this is the next set we're going to, and get sort of marshal the troops.
Mm-hmm. That truck is going to get there at the right hour with the right piece of equipment in it that you're going to need.
Yeah. That things are staged these are the 7 lights that always come to set every day. Let's have them built and ready to fly in. Why is staging a mess? You and you go clean that up.
Yeah, got
Well,
it.
and
sort of
just
thing.
the scheduling aspect of the guys. I mean, you guys all three mentioned that that is a job in and of itself, and something that the best boy does off hours a lot of time that would just consume all of your time. Like one guy or one gal cancels out on you at 6 p.m. and you need to fill that call by tomorrow. You, as the gaffer, don't want to use your resources to do that. You have other things to do to get everything prepared for the actual job tomorrow. So they're invaluable.
I mean, I did that for over 10 years. And it's important because you're dealing with also, one of the main things to deal with is also is power, electricity. Gaffer pretty much is just going to say, hey, I need two 10Ks over there. And they don't want to hear about stands or cable sizes or who's getting the adapter of the stands. And they certainly don't want to hear about any problems with that. They just want the light to show up. And that's the best boy's job.
And Mike is listed as credit on IMDb as best boy on Girl 6 that I was the New York gaffer on.
Oh, connection.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a long time
Was a
ago.
long time ago.
I do have my gray hair now. It's just over there in the trash can.
Awesome.
I'll accept that in any case.
Yeah. Well, we have a comment from Samuel, huge fan of Uchita here. So, Jason, the next question will go to you. At what point do you decide what equipment to have on set, and what is your responsibility when it comes to budget?
So my responsibility when it comes to budget, that number is usually set before the gear list is really finalized. So usually in my case, production has agreed to a number and we have to operate within that number no matter what that means as far as making the actual design come into reality. So there's a lot of sort of wheeling and dealing in the back room as far as getting the distro, getting the networking, getting the fixtures, swapping out fixtures for other fixtures, and so on and so forth to make that design come to life as it was intended. Because a lot of times the design comes to us without any of the skeleton of the rig in place. So you end up developing a really great relationship with all of the various vendors that you'll work with, because a lot of times you're reliant upon them to be able to fill this order for the number quoted, even though that number didn't necessarily include everything necessary to make the job happen. And every vendor is aware of that going into it, but some rigs that number is more egregiously off than others, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like that in theater too.
Yeah, probably everywhere. Christian, how about you? When do you decide what equipment is on set, and what is your responsibility when it comes to budget?
So budget-wise, I am usually in the dark until after I've broken the rules and gone over budget. Now you tell me that, but I don't. I usually just, it's like a used car salesman or a car salesman of any sort for that matter, where you kind of look at the producers and what they're talking about, and you can kind of judge by how many weeks of pre-production and how many bodies they give you on the shooting crew and the day player. You kind of just have to read between the lines whether, where it might fall. You're doing your thing, you're dreaming about the visuals and the aesthetics and taking in all this. And like Jason said, the recipe says 3 pineapples for pineapple upside down cake, and your producer comes back and say, I can only afford 1.
Yeah.
It has to taste good, right? I don't, nowadays on that collaboration thing, I do end up with a close relationship. A week or 3 in, I end up with a close shorthand with the UPM, the production manager or the line producer, depending on, how that is set up, where we don't spend a lot of time together, but we have a very quick shorthand. Yeah, it's okay. No, it's not. We just had a rig where we had to take out about half of the stage lights to get back to the budget because they replaced some staff in the producing office. And you're like, great, how's that going to work? But we got to do it.
Yep. Evin, how about you?
I would agree with Christian that, I'm in prep right now for a show, and I'm going to walk the stage Wednesday and I'm getting notes from the DP about, okay, this is what we're going to hang at the stage, and this is the floor package for the stage, and this is the truck package. And we're going to put in our orders of this is everything we want. And then production's going to come back to us and say, you ordered 3 pineapples, we can only afford 1 pineapple. And it's a negotiation, and it becomes a conversation between me and the DP saying, well, these 2 things kind of do the same thing. Maybe we can live with one of them, or it's episodic. When we know we need it in episode 3, we can day play it. Or it goes to, if it really becomes fraught, it goes sort of up the food chain where the director and the TP have to look at it and go, okay, we can't creatively afford to do what we had planned. So how do we work within the scale? Which is, I mean, you do have to be a bit of a diplomat sometimes where you're like, I want to make you happy, but I've now been put in a position where it's just not financially possible. I'm either not being given the manpower or the gear, and it's a tricky line to walk.
Sure.
And hopefully you have a UPM who sort of understands that position.
Great. And Michael, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I in doing this kind of a while, and I approach it that I don't pay attention to the budget until someone tells me I have to. I go with my best foot forward and ask for what's needed based on the sets and the schedule. And if someone is unhappy with that, then they need to supply me with the solution for it. I can't suggest less equipment or less manpower or a way to do it that's less expensive. For me, it's staying on the one-liner and delivering what's been asked for. I had a very well-known producer in New York tell me one day that my job wasn't to save money. He knew that because he told me I was terrible at it. And he would decide if it couldn't be afforded. And I did several films with him, and he was right. I mean, there was a day when something came up. We were supposed to do something at a hotel on location, and the art department decided to build it in an armory. And I walked into the armory and saw a set that made my stomach sink because it was a backdrop that was 100 feet long by 70 feet high. And I found out what I asked for it was going to cost, $1 million.
Sure.
And I, sure, yeah, that's what it costs. And then they wrote a purchase order, and the equipment showed up. And I thought, okay, cool.
Right.
It's important to someone.
Yeah. No, they're
that all I could do is put together. I mean, it was about cubic feet, numbers of windows.
Right. You can't argue with distance.
right.
Christian, you were going to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, to Mike's point.
Why cut corners until the corners are asked to be cut?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, they're the adults in this conversation when it comes to money. If they don't give us the money up front to manage, then don't ask us to manage it.
Yeah.
And there's a great skill to pushing it back uphill to the adults because they're happy to make it our problem, right? One says, I want this. The other says, you can only have that. And they can both go to sleep at night and it'll be our fault if we don't deliver unless we do the proper job notifying the proper people what it takes in a reasonable amount of time considering whatever schedule we're on. So there's a great skill. I find that a lot of people on the production side above us are happy to let us say no or to cut back if we're willing. But like Mike suggested, that's not my job is to deliver the thing.
So I'm going to throw this out to the group. So staying with the fruit metaphor, how do you know it's 3 pineapples and not 3 apples? Like how do you know? Like, what's that decision based on?
Experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that it? Yeah.
You've done it before. The first time I went to order stuff, the more often you do it, the more you learn, like this takes that. I mean, I think it's just doing it again and again and again.
And is that based on the script, or is it based on the meeting with the DP, or how do you determine all of it? I
think it's all of it. It's talking to the DP and what they think what they say to you. This is what I want. This is the look I want. It's looking at the set plans. That's what Michael said. It's about cubic feet. If the art department builds it, I have to light it.
Got
They
it.
can't say to me, we're never going to shoot it, because on the day, I'm going to look like the one who didn't deliver, right? That's what Christian was saying. If you build this big set, you've approved art department's budget to build all of that.
So you have to light it.
You have to light it, or I'm going to look like an idiot.
Michael, you wanted to follow up? Go ahead.
You also can't believe someone when they say things like, I've rigged very large stage complexes where they said, we'll never shoot this set and that set at the same time.
No.
Yeah, we're going to need power sources and dimmer racks
And generators.
to do both at the same time. And I've never been wrong when it comes to that. I mean, we say about whether it should be pineapples, whether it should be, what was your other fruit, apples?
Let's say apples.
I like papayas.
We get into this probably later when it comes to technology.
Yes.
I had situations where more recently I came to an arena where we were going to build sets, and I was shocked at how little power there was available. And given the size of it, they were building a lot of sets, and it became immediately apparent that we were going to have to dig deeply into more LED lighting because the stage was not going to have the amperage that was required to work with a full court system. While at the same time, LEDs were not going to be what would work for all the sets and the size of them. So there's going to have to be a real even blend of new technology and old school technology, which is more power hungry. So it became a matter of how much power do we have that's available, and then start thinking about unit selection based on the realities of the sets and what's available to us in the infrastructure.
That's a great segue. But first, Jason, do you want to add anything before we move on to equipment?
No, I don't think so. I think that we've basically hit all the points.
Yeah. No more fruit. Okay, Drew.
Yeah, so great segue to the technology. It has obviously evolved over time, large and small, from cameras, lenses, film, digital. Christian, how has the evolution in technology changed the way you work over time?
The LED thing is great, is absolutely great, but I find that technology, not just the LEDs, the advent of email and text and WhatsApp and all these things have allowed people to not plan as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right
God,
on.
yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
And that's at every level. There are DPs who have only worked for a year or two in the industry and are carrying a business card around, and they don't have a variety of information at hand. There's producers who did a webisode, right out of college, and now they're producers at a network because they, landed on their feet, and they don't have the ability to speak specifically about our jobs, to evaluate what we're doing with wisdom as well as financial concern. So they'll go straight to the number at the bottom, as if that is the only thing that matters, knowing full well that, if we just go by the numbers, this particular aspect of the show might turn out terrible and embarrassing and is not what they want. So there becomes a thing there that I'm very happy. I'm a little older in the process of knowing, some old school planning, some old school apples and oranges and papayas and varieties of ways to do some things. And then the LED thing, color wise, for those of us in the theater background and listeners in the theater, have a much more sophisticated sense of color. And LED, though it has made it colorful, or ability to be more colorful on the moment, we're not as thoughtful and specific. So I kind of miss those.
Sure.
But I love LEDs. When they're right, they are so right.
Yeah, I guess when we talking about that question, I was thinking like gear, but you just open it up, Christian, when it comes to technology altogether, from cell phones and email, how that changed how everybody works as well.
It has.
Yeah, that's
In the same way that LEDs that change color makes designers not have to make a decision about color until they're sitting there in the moment. So, it's all connected.
But
Yeah,
it makes some things possible in the moment that is phenomenal. We could never do.
That you could never do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason, how about you? How has technology changed the way you work?
Well, it's made it a lot easier in a lot of ways, like Christian is talking about with LED. We're not taking these huge, amounts of touring racks in and having thousands of dimmers on a show with a couple thousand lights. Now we'll have a couple thousand lights, but the power consumption is a fraction of what it used to be. And it makes that a lot easier. But on the same hand, like the other side of what he was talking about, the quality of LED light, while it does provide for a much bigger diversity in what we do, it's just not what my eye craves on like that visceral animal level. Like I am comfortable when something is burning and that is creating light. It makes me feel safe and warm and happy, and I have a visceral response to it. LED, when I'm just exciting an electron to jump between places, isn't doing that same thing. It's the same reason we go to the doctor's office and the fluorescent lights are in there. We just don't feel as well as we should because we're exciting that gas and it is an unnatural color, and I'm not happy about it. So
That's right.
there's like a give and a take with both of those things. I miss incandescent lights. I love not dealing with them at work.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Evin, how about you?
I mean, I would echo what Jason and Christian said.
Mhm.
Absolutely true. I think, in theater, dimmer board ops and programmers have been around. It's always been a given. In the film world, it's a little bit more recent. 10, 15 years, Michael, maybe even, that it's become more prevalent. And with the advent of LED, it's now become, we should have a board op on location and not just at the stage. And that's sort of been a battle we've been having crew-wise. Like, no, we really should have a board op because now we can have somebody adjusting all the levels while it's a better workflow. And COVID actually helps us in that argument because all of a sudden I'm like, oh, do you want me to send a person into set with all your unmasked actors to adjust that light? Or do you want someone 20 feet away in another room to make that adjustment? But I tend to feel like the right tool for the right job, and I like both of them. I just did a show, which was like a sketch comedy show called Z-Way, and the actress just looked beautiful lit by Licos or like a clean Fresnel. She was gorgeous, and her face could take that level without diffusion or anything like that. That's not true of everybody who appears on camera. But I think one of the things where, well, all the color changing, and I love not having to deal with cutting gel and pinning it on, and now it's melting, and let's swap it out, and all of this. I have yet to see an LED Fresnel or that kind of harder source compete with the old school versions of that. Like, I love Titans, I love the Sky panels, color courses. They're all great. They are all very soft sources that don't do what a Fresnel does. I don't know, maybe if one exists and one of my fellow gaffers knows about it, I'd love to know.
No?
It's crickets. Before we get to Michael,
Here's my $1 million idea.
There it is. Evin, I want to follow up on one thing you said. You talked about the actor, the actress, the performer. How much of that is your responsibility? I'm sure there's wardrobe and makeup involved in hair, but how much do you want to make them look great on film? That
varies a bit project to project as well. I spent 4 years gaffing a TV show called Power, and it was very slick, and everyone was supposed to look beautiful no matter like how down on their luck, just beat up by thugs in the back alley. They were still had to look sexy. And there was a lot of concern. Even, we went through lighting, and then even in post, every actress got like a certain amount of cosmetic digitizing, and they were, in person, they were all good-looking people. It wasn't like we were
sure.
But other jobs, it's not. I think my job as the gaffer is just in some ways to be a backup set of eyes for a DP who's looking at not just at the lighting, but looking at the entire composition, and to notice, oh wait, this nose shadow is kind of, maybe we should go up a little. I also think it's good to know, like, if you have the cast, like, oh, this person looks best when the light is up high. This person really needs it square. You sort of get to know over time what each actor needs. But then I worked for a DP who was like, I hate doing beauty lighting and we're never going to do it. but I don't care.
I'm sure the actors
And-
appreciate that.
And well, he does. It was David Franco who does Westworld and Game of Thrones, and he does.
Yeah.
I think he knows what he's doing, and he was
Yes.
a joy to work for.
Sorry, Michael, I interrupted. Did you want to add anything to this before we move on?
When it comes to technology we're doing now, I mean, like when you first start in the business or any job, everybody says to me, somebody write it down. And so you remember it. I think right now, like something like Vectorworks, I don't do a stage layout without that first. I come into the project, I go immediately to art department and open up a dialogue between the assistant art director, my programmer, and the programmer on the show that I've had with us, Ted Reed's been with us for more than a decade. And we immediately draft our plans into Vectorworks or WYSIWYG. And that way we know that when we're going to set a truss or a pipeline, we're going to see where the art department's pipe is. We can give the information to the grips, so we can actually layer and build our look with much more preciseness and say, oh, and I've had to go back to art directors and say, hey, can we move this wall 4 feet? Because there's no way we can light these windows with the space you've given us on the architecture of the stage we're in. So something like, those previs programs are absolutely essential right now.
Lighting designers in theater don't often have the opportunity to have the walls moved, I will say. So I'm very jealous.
On hard before you go in there. So the sooner you can get in the door, the better you try to get a programmer on as soon as I can, because we mentioned about lights and LED and power, but right now data has become equally as important as power, and the network of data for that is crucial. The show I just put in, I had 4 people spend a month, and their primary job was laying in data so that everywhere we were on the stage, we were able to control all the lights. Evin mentioned COVID. I know you want to discuss it a little bit later, but right now we have the ability to have lights on the ground that are brought in on the day. We're using more like lusters instead of conventional source floors. So the DP can have the creative control of changing color. And that again is data. So right now, I think the current show we have, I'm going to throw out, I think we're at 18 universes. And we're not even doing, I mean, it's required because those LEDs they're
just for the numbers.
They're big data hogs.
Yeah.
And the power consumption they use is not small either. People think, oh, using LEDs, just plug it in the wall. We have 3,000 amps of LEDs on our stage, right?
Jason and Christian, do you want to add anything to that? Anything else you want to add before we move on? You can say no.
Data is huge. The average electrician, if they don't know data and is on it, basically, they don't have to know like the programmer, but I don't want to work with them if they don't know a little bit of data and menus. You know, the old school guy who just knows how to plug in a Fresnel, I can't work with anymore. You know,
that is fascinating.
It's absolutely the same on my crews. You have to know it. Like we are, on these one-offs, we're taking in literally sometimes a couple thousand lights, not always. Sometimes it's 1,500, sometimes it's 1,000, sometimes it's 500, but they're large rigs. And we're going over 100+ universes on these things. So I can't have one person that doesn't know that, because it's just not going to work. There's no such thing as a light that only takes power on these shows.
That's right. I would ask how to explain universe, but that's, sorry, Evin, go ahead.
I'm wondering if I can ask a question to Jason.
Yeah, you do.
Because it sounds like you're on the road and your job seems to sort of bridge the film and theater world a bit. How much time do you normally get to install one of these events?
So it depends. Like if we have more than 2 days, we're living large. Like if you get a week to put something in, we're living large. Like we're coming in and we're slamming these shows in sometimes in one day. I mean, the one I've had was probably about 2,000 lights in one day.
Wow. And you come in with just a massive crew.
It comes with a ton of pre-production work where we go in the shop, we pre-rig it like a rock and roll tour. It rolls in on trusses that then bolt together with make and breaks, and it goes up, and it is designed to do that. So obviously my front end job becomes a lot more extensive on a show like that versus something that's going to be in a studio where we get a couple weeks to put something in. Then that is a completely different monster. The shop prep time goes way down, and we do it in a more traditional fashion. But because I'm in these locations is so valuable, and like, I think Michael was talking about doing something in an arena as well. You're going around the basketball and hockey schedules in there. So you have hard outs, and every hour you go beyond your hard out can be hundreds of thousands of dollars in penalties. So you need to make sure that you can do what you've said you're going to do in the time you're going to do it.
I was going to add something. Jason works on something that's blueprint and goes in quick. I work, and Evin works, and Christian, we work in something that's referred to as single camera television. Just any category. I don't do multicam or live events or pedestal television. And when you do single camera events, what it means is we can have 3 or 4 cameras on a single camera show. It basically means that we do it feature style, where there's multiple cameras. We stop, we start, we do turnarounds. When you do that, we have no blueprint. The director and the DP make it up scene by scene. So,
shot by shot.
It's the first time. Mentioned laying in data. We don't know what we're going to do an hour from now. So when I lay on a stage, when I bring lights to set, I have to bring in more and be flexible and have 2 extra universes standing by, because hey, we're going to bring in 4 more S60s. Oh, let's bring in another 20 feet of color force units, and they just thought of this and they want to do it in 10 minutes. So we have to have a lot more flexibility, and like we plan for the change, not the plan.
Yeah.
Right. I like that.
Yeah. Shockingly, we're running out of time. So there are a couple of comments. Is there anything you want to bring in, Drew? From
yeah, let's bring in Paul Killsdock, what he just said. He said, I'm watching an old episode of Love Boat. Don't judge me, but the moonlight is fantastic, and I can see the details of their eyes. What has happened to modern television and movie lighting that we have lots of shadows and can't see the emotion of the eyes?
That's style over equipment, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there an answer to that? I think that's a choice, right?
Yeah, Moody is in for sure.
Yeah. I would say TV is trying to emulate features a lot more, and one of the big differences between when I was first coming up, people were like, you either did TV or you did features, and it seemed like there was a very big dichotomy. But from my perspective now, the only difference is in TV, I'm expected to produce the same quality of feature work in half the time.
Right. Yeah.
But it also means that there's really interesting work happening in TV. There's really beautiful lighting and really beautiful camera work and all kinds of things that you probably didn't see as much in the 70s. I also watched Love Boat. I don't judge.
And one person's beautiful lighting is another person's dark, and I can't see their eyes. Sorry, Christian, were you gonna say something?
I was on Love Boat as a teenager. They came to St. Thomas, and I was walking the beach in the background. But the idea, I like what you said. I mean, we're expected to produce feature work. How'd you say it? In the same time?
Half the time.
Half the time.
TV the pace is insane.
And one difference which really isn't us, is in television, there's as much detail in the content from a visual point of view, but there's not as much script, actor, director specificity as in a feature. So creatively, they don't seem to keep up with features, but visually,
interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, we are. Yep. Let's go to our rapid fire section. That's just going to be a round of questions that we're going to get through really quickly because we are running out of time. So let's get started here.
Jeff's Roundtable Rapid
Okay,
Fire.
where do we go first? We go.
Can't get started until
Can't start without that. All right.
Let me see. Here we are. Evin, Michael. Okay, let's
Michael,
start with
Jason,
it.
Christian.
Yep.
Evin, one piece of equipment you can't do without.
A mini bird.
Michael. One piece of equipment you can't do
My
without.
favorite
Michael.
light? Well, it was an ARC, but now it's an S60.
Great. Jason, piece of equipment you can't do without.
Grandma 2 or 3 now, but MA2 software.
Christian.
My phone. It's a light meter if I stepped on mine or broke it, but it's also a sundial when I'm scouting locations, and it's a note taker and a share of information.
Oh, you should work for a phone company now. Someone should, and you should have an endorsement. Christian, sticking with you, most useful tool you've ever made for yourself, something you've invented.
I have no idea what that. I don't make.
You don't.
I saw that question. I was like, I hope that's not me.
Jason, have you ever made any? Have you invented anything for yourself?
I made my work boxes, including my office box with my color laser and my sitting stand desk in it.
Very good. Michael, have you invented a light?
Oh, I think he's frozen.
Or Evin?
No, I really dislike the artsy craftsy. I want it to be solid and just turn on, and I don't want to have to worry about it being soldered.
I have to say the few TV sets that I've worked on, there was always some crazy homemade arts and craftsy thing that the
Yes.
gaffer pulls out of a back room.
I have a ribbon kit that I torture my crew with. I'm sure they hate.
Evin, an innovation that has made your job easier, other than the cell phone.
I would say the sky panels and the whole world of color changing lights and that. Yeah.
Michael. Oh, do we have Michael back?
Michael, his iPad died. Hopefully he just puts it on a charger.
Okay. Jason, an innovation that has made your job easier.
Agreeing with Michael, Vectorworks, and then shout out to McKernan. The latest Lightright made my life a lot easier when I could, transfer information back and forth.
He gets a lot of shout outs here, or he should. He doesn't get enough. Christian.
Snap grids.
Ooh.
I think you have the job that I need from grips and flags and cutters.
Yeah. Something that has gone away that you miss, Christian.
Tungsten Fresnels and the opportunity to use them as the entire source of the set.
Yeah. Jason.
Man, that was kind of my answer as well. Just incandescent lights in general, incandescent lighting.
Yeah.
And Michael's back, so we'll bring him in.
Michael, something that has gone away that you miss.
Well, I said it earlier, that it was arcs. I'm lucky that I'm still using a lot of tungsten lights.
Yeah.
I miss our lunches.
We're going to get to that in a moment. We're not going to run out of time before we talk about that. Evin.
Prep time. And I will say that I used a ton of Fresnels on my last job that I just wrapped up.
You guys should all get together. Evin, sticking with you, an important skill needed to do what you do.
Oh, I think you have to be able to visualize things in your head really well.
Yeah. Michael.
Listen.
Jason.
Patience.
Christian.
Not to be stuck with the plan you have in your head for the thing.
All amazing answers. Christian, sticking with you. Best advice you were given by anyone. Best advice you were given.
You are a light. So if you show up as a light being, as a positive person, people will want to work with you, whatever the problem is.
Words to live by. Jason.
Separate your home life from your work life. When the workday is over, it's over.
Michael.
Learn how to use a console and stop running Forot.
Evin.
Bigger is just bigger. When I was offered a really big job that was 10 times the size of anything I'd ever done, and I was a little terrified, somebody took me aside and said, bigger is just bigger. You put a tweenie there or you put 3 10Ks there, they go there.
This is all great advice. Evin, something that excites you about what you do.
I find it incredibly exciting or satisfying when I do picture a setup in my head and it actually turns out the way I pictured it.
And it works.
That it works. I was like, this is what Yeah.
Michael.
Being told thank you.
Thank you. Jason.
Just being able to keep all the gals and guys working.
Here. Christian.
That live moment in the shoot when you feel like everybody's alive and tingling and the energy is there. Everybody's department has creative ideas have come together. It's almost as good as live theater.
Cool. Last rapid fire question. Longest day you've ever spent on set or most consecutive hours worked? Do you recall that, Christian?
In film and TV, music videos in the 90s. Mike might have been there with me, maybe.
Yeah.
Probably 28, 29 hours. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer we're looking for. Jason, longest day you've ever spent on set?
Probably about 32 hours.
Michael.
It was over 24 hours, and they served, I believe it was called the fourth meal.
Evan.
Oh, I'm topping this one. 34 hours because Thursday went so long it ran into Friday. I was in meal penalty for third meal for like 8 hours.
That sounds horrible, but also maybe
it was
not
horrible
so bad at the same time. Yeah, horrible. Okay, so let's race to the end here. Let's treat the rest of this like we're still doing the rapid fire section. And Evan, let's stick with you. Speaking of work rules, let's spend a couple of minutes on that. Actually, let's spend a couple of seconds on that. There's a lot of discussion in theater lately about the time people spend at work. What are the rules in film and TV, and the hours, meal breaks, things like that, and who sets those rules?
I mean, it's really dictated by production, and we're sort of at their mercy unless a crew decides to get together and say, this is enough. And I don't know that I've personally experienced that.
Right.
There's a lot of rules. I don't know if you know.
Well, Michael, what are your thoughts?
Well, a lot of networks have tried, like for instance, the show that I'm on, they're not permitted to work more than 14 hours.
Right.
I know that, and as for the union, we can't work a 16th hour without calling a union officer and getting permission. And at that point, we have to deal with hotel rooms and safety rides home.
Yeah.
So, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm in my 30th year in the union. And I believe that it's not just one day or 1 week or one shot. It's a full career. And you can't just think of this as, it's just going to be a tough day.
Right.
It's going to be a tough week.
You'll hurt yourself. Right.
And,
yeah.
And these crew members, they're looking at 18 more years in their career, or maybe just 18 weeks. So you can't just look at any one particular hard day as being getting through it. You have to look at a cumulative of a whole career in an industry, so that no one is injured or hurt, or have to try to perform beyond physical human limits.
Yes, absolutely. Jason, would you like to add anything to that? It's a little different in your world because you're, trying to put something in.
It's a little different. It varies contract to contract, but I'm fortunate in that I get to sit in the production meetings with the producers, the EIC, the line producer, everybody, and kind of come to a reasonable agreement on what's what, as far as it goes, as long as it never goes below the contract minimums, of course.
Yeah. And Christian?
The idea of meal breaks and things like that, we'll do 5 or 6 hours meal break. Another 5 or 6 hours is generally quitting time. The overtime thing these days, I don't see as much of, and I don't miss it at this phase in my life.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, Christian, let's stick with you. And can you just very quickly, like, pick a work day, and what is that like for you? From when you wake up in the morning to you go to work, what's a typical, like the fast forwarded version of a typical day for you?
Lately it's been 5 a.m. alarm to be on set at 7, and I could push it to an hour and a half, but then run like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to stay up with the first set and the second set, where I spend a lot of time while shooting, radioing the guys, trying to motivate them that ahead is important, not just where we are right now. And lunch is, halfway through the day. We'll work till 6 or 7 on a show because we have a child actor who only gets 10 hours maximum, or 10 and a half, something like that. So it's been pretty reasonable. We had a big set where I would drop off of the shooting unit on the scene and go ahead to the gym where we're doing a big prom thing and spend 2 hours in there while calling back to set because they're pretty simple. And at the same time, we're texting each other and emailing the shop and trying to follow up with the producer about labor tomorrow, and hopefully creating a few wins in the course of a day.
Yeah. Good goals. Jason, a typical day for you. What's one day, a day in the life at work?
A typical day is, if I'm in town, I'm up about 3 hours early to give myself 2 hours to drive to work, because I live in Orange County and drive to LA, or I'm on the road, which is great, and I wake up at the hotel and walk about 10 minutes to site. But then once I'm there, we have a list of things to accomplish that day. And a lot of times, as quickly as we can accomplish them, that dictates how well that day is going to go for us. But We do get curveballs, but definitely nothing like what you guys are talking about, Christian, Michael, and Evin, as far as being at the whims of the DP. By the time I get on site, that ship has sailed, and unless there's an issue, we're going with the plan.
Cool. Evin, how about you? What's your typical?
I mean, my commute varies pretty wildly. I'm about to start a job I can ride my bike to, which makes me happy.
Awesome.
I like to get to set half an hour to 45 minutes before call to get breakfast, to get settled in, to see what's going on. I usually at that point will have a chat with my rigging gaffer about how that, whatever, anything hiccups that for the set we're arriving on and what's sort of coming down the pipe, because that's really the one time of day where she and I can sit down and talk without, oh, I have to get to set, this is happening, craziness. I am, on set, on walkie, meters on, 5 to 10 minutes before call. I expect my crew to be on walkie, at call, ready to work. And then it's whatever the day holds. I mean, we don't always break at 6 hours. That jobs more and more seem to like meal penalties, and it's just light till they say wrap.
And on and on and on. Michael, what is a typical day for you?
I usually arrive on set 5 a.m., sometimes 4 a.m. if the shooting crew has an early call. I'll be landing generators, pushing a crew of anywhere from 10 to 15 people, laying down cable, rigging condors on locations, and then keep tabs on that set, and then maybe leave to go to another set where there's another rig going on for the following day. Go by and stop by the stage where there's rigs going on and wraps. Then go re-scout something because the schedule changed and they lost the location. So on any given day, even as a ring gaffer, I'll visit 2-3 locations and average about 22,000 steps.
Wow. Right. Do you have a Fitbit?
I do have one. That's how I know.
Amazing.
Yeah, Michael, we'll stick with you. What are you working on now, or what did you just finish working on?
I am right now working on The Equalizer, CBS, Sunday nights.
What time does it start?
8 p.m. Eastern time.
We'll finish in time.
Yep, we'll finish in time so you can catch The Equalizer.
And it's a reboot of a show from the 80s that a lot of people might remember. We used to have a British gentleman, and now we have Queen Latifah in the starring role. It's filmed all here in New Jersey, and we're right in the middle of it.
Cool,
awesome. Jason, how about you? Any job you finished or are currently?
Just finished Premios Lo Nuestro for Univision, and now did the shot prep for Kids' Choice Awards, and we'll start loading in Kids' Choice Awards on Tuesday.
Awesome.
Cool.
Christian, how about you?
Colin in Black and White, about Colin Kaepernick, his early life, directed by and produced by Ava DuVernay for Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing that since November, and that's just about to wrap. And I started a Ryan Murphy Productions show, some version of horror Black Mirror-ish style show that I just signed on to.
Awesome.
Cool. That's great.
And Evin?
I really, Friday, wrapped the Untitled Z-Way project, which is like a sketch comedy show that'll air on Showtime. You can follow Z-Way on Instagram. This was inspired by interviews she did with white supremacists, asking them, why are you a white supremacist? And then on Monday, I start prep on season 4 of The Last OG, which is my first season on it. So.
Excellent. It sounds like you're all very busy, which is exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to watch everything that you just said.
I think as a Uniton answer, I assume there are COVID protocols, and I assume they're keeping you all very safe. How do you feel about working in these times where a lot of people aren't working?
I'm fortunate.
Jump right in.
Very lucky.
I feel fortunate in that the various governors from, I know specifically New York and California, worked very much with the unions and guilds throughout the pause that went on from March to October. They put in place a return to work. They did in conjunction with the CDC, so that I know that our show, for instance, we have 3 levels of testing. Some crew members are tested every single day. Actors and day players are rapid tested every single morning before they're allowed to come to set.
Yep.
We wear Obviously, we're all wearing masks. We're wearing masks and shields if we're ever on set. There's different pods, different groups of people. There is a department. I would say our COVID department is ours is larger than any other single department: grip, electric, sound, or camera.
Wow.
Really?
It's a team of about 30 people, and they're everything from administrators to people doing testing. We have on-site lab at our stage and mobile ones on location. We have a production supervisor whose only job is to oversee COVID supervisors, managers, testing people. And from what I've been told, 1/3 of our project is spent on COVID compliance of our budget.
Christian, is that your experience as well? I hadn't heard anything quite like that before.
Yeah, the description Mike gave is much more specific than I know. I'm not sure how many people we have, but now I want to ask them tomorrow morning. It's education. I know the budget is very impactful. I'm tested every day, PCR testing every work day.
Yep.
Period. And anybody who comes around main talent and camera is. And now the day players are not the day players, our regular shooting crew who may not be at camera, at talent, is also tested every day. We were doing them less frequently, but they're every day now too, PCR testing. So it's cool. The mask thing is crazy town.
Yeah. Evin, was yours?
My experience is very similar to Mike's. I have not been on a job that had an on-site lab, and I've done, I think, 5 or 6 different productions since this started.
Yeah.
The first thing I did back was actually a Broadway show capture. We were at a Broadway stage, and they quarantined the entire production. They bought out a hotel.
Yeah.
And for, I think, the film part of the crew, we were in there for 2 weeks. Camera was in there for a week. The local one side of it, like the Broadway side of the crew, they were there for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But they did, I have to say, an amazing job of making a difficult situation as pleasant and workable as possible. And in general, that's been my experience.
Good.
People ask like, if you were to say what sort of characterizes people who work on film crews, and we are problem solvers. Nothing is made, very little is made specifically for our industry. We're like, oh, here's a restaurant. We need it to look like night for the 12 hours a day. Go.
Right.
So if any industry was going to figure out, okay, how do we work under safe conditions during COVID, it was going to be us. And I'm not usually this like sort of sentimental, but it made me very proud of my industry.
Yeah.
And the people I work with.
Absolutely. Jason, you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so. I just think that anytime you're on production, there is an extensive COVID protocol everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And some are more extensive than others. I mean, I worked for Telemundo a couple of months ago, and that's at NBC Universal. So NBC Universal's COVID policy is about 3.5 inches of binder, and Telemundo layered theirs on top, so it's about 4 inches of binder of information as far as what the protocol is for COVID. And every one of my jobs, because of the nature of them, we have on-site testing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Great.
Last question, right, Drew?
Yep.
This is a quick one. 1 sentence answer, maybe. Jason, what advice that you would give to people who want to do what you do? What should they do now?
Advice that I would give to them would be, I think, just to show up on time and do what you're told, because it's surprising how many people can't do that. And if you can just do those 2 very simple things, you will go straight to the top in any business, really, not just this one, but it's sadly true often.
Yeah.
Michael.
What he said.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, and
I'm going to go a little bit outside, say that you cannot forego a classical education and a formal education in the arts. I had one, and I can say that I rely on it every day. Knowing about art history, film history. There's lots of times to earn a living. There's lots of times to move heavy equipment and be mistreated on a production. But there's only really one really good time in your life to gain an education that will carry you through the rest of your life. And I tell every young person, aim really high. Don't like look for the job that you really want and track towards that job long before you settle for something that you fall into.
Yeah. Evin.
This is sort of an extension of what Jason said, but it's sort of be present on set. Put your cell phone away.
Oh yeah.
I got opportunities to gaff because I was a third who was on set that the director of photography got to know because I was there and I was paying attention. And when I saw the gaffer and the DP looking at a light, I walked over and stood next to that light and was there before it was asked for.
Sure.
So it's just, it's about being present.
Yeah.
And paying attention to what's happening.
Christian.
I would hire Evin for doing just that.
Yeah.
No, literally,
I'll come work for you. I want my LA card.
seriously, I would, because that you want someone there who's paying attention to you.
We'll trade info.
For sure. My advice would be two things. If you're trying to become a thing, Gaffer or whatever, the route I took was the small independent projects and call myself a Gaffer and learn along the way. Some people take the more formal big productions and are electrics and work their way up and then go across to Gaffer. I liked it because people were saying my name as Gaffer. And so that's the marketing tool. It's one is not better than the other. There's a lot of things you learn doing it the sort of studio big project way as well. So it's cool. But I like that. And then the other thing that I think is important is what we do is a visual industry, a visual contribution to the industry. So you must fill your head up with images, whether that's through schooling, like Mike was talking about, going to see shows, reading, traveling. You must have your head full of things. So when we turn left, you've got something to offer. When we turn right and the budget's cut in half, you've got something to offer.
I think that's a great place to leave it.
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all so much. Before we all say goodbye, is there anything else anyone wants to add or retract or clarify before we go? Here's your last chance.
I will say, I feel like, we're 20 minutes over the hour, but I feel like we could have talked way longer. I feel
we could have gone
just
longer.
Keep going. So
Thank you. Gaffers are chatty, is what we learned.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I learned a lot. It was a great panel. Somebody commented in saying that WandaVision had shot the entire set with all conventionals to get the right retro look. Yes. It was a cool throwback. So that's actually something I didn't know. And when I finish watching that season, I'll watch it in a totally different way, totally different light. How about that? Thank you again. I really appreciate it, Christian, Jason, Michael, and Evin. It was great. And we will be back next Sunday with a different panel, programmers. And we have a super special kind of announcement thing that we're going to do next week on Sunday. So we'll see everybody next week. This panel, Gaffers, thank you again. It was great.
You're amazing. You're all great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.